So, for some reason, everybody is leisurely joining in, but that is your prerogative. Uh, we had yesterday covered. Mesolithic, Paleolithic, or what we call as prehistoric paintings. And now our idea shifts away. And we move towards what are called cave paintings, but in man-made caves. And that is called something very specific. I'll tell you what it means. The modern architecture part has less portion, yes. When we have art and culture webinar 18th. So I discussed 3Dness with you, discussed single point perspective, and the last thing we discussed was the issue of scale and depth. This is what we covered previously. Now, today we enter a specific type of discussion, and that discussion is about what we call as mural paintings. It's called a discussion on murals. Now, there are two words which you will encounter mostly everywhere, which is mural and fresco. There are two words. Now, mural is a bigger word. Fresco is a type of mural. Mural is basically paintings done on very big surfaces. And fresco is a type of a mural. So mural could be on the ceiling, could be on the wall. It's basically a painting done on a big surface other than a canvas. Now, when you basically make a mural, what you do is that there's a wall there and you draw something on it. Now, this is a mural. But within a mural, there is a subtype. And that subtype is called fresco. Fresco is a specific type of mural in which when the wall, for example, this is a wall, the wall has been plastered. When it has been plastered, the plaster, the cement, whatever you want to call it, is still wet. So what you do is that it is wet because of the water content. You take water soluble paint and you put onto it when it is in the process of being wet and drying. So what happens is that the color is then absorbed by the plaster of Paris or the plaster or the cement, and the painting becomes more permanent. So frescoes survive better than all murals itself generally because of the way it is done. So when we talk about the cave paintings which we are seeing, most of them are actually frescoes. But the bigger word which we use is mural. Mural is nothing but a big painting done on a very big surface and has multiple dimensions in it. Now, the first proper painting which we saw in the form of murals or in cave paintings other than prehistoric paintings comes from Ajanta. Now, Ajanta, we already know the oldest surviving mural tradition in India, the oldest Buddhist caves also. And in this, you have multiple images of bodhisattvas or Buddha. So, for example, you have Vajrapani, you have Manjushri, and you have Bodhisattva Padampani, all in cave number 1, which is considered very, very important. The dying princess is another very interesting thing. You have the lying Buddha also, which is represented. But what we have to understand properly are these three. This is a Jatak image. This is, if you've ever seen Upinder Singh, is on the book, is on the front of the Upinder Singh. This is Bodhisattva Padampani or Avalokeshwar. And thereafter, you have Vajrapani represented here. Now, if you look at the basic design of any of these paintings, obviously in the examination, you don't show the examiner anything. You can't show the examiner anything generally. What you do is that you have to tell the basic elements which are there. Now, when we talk about Ajanta, Ajanta paintings have a very specific type of technique. And what is ironic is that even from Ajanta, and if you go to even Jain caves such as the Sittanavasal caves, or go to any other cave which is made after 500 years, same features persist, which tell us that the artisans and the aesthetic choice remain the same. So, in Ajanta, we see three very important characteristics. One is called no bordering. If you see, the borders of the paintings are not very well defined. So there is no conscious attempt to create a proper border, and therefore, these images, that is why, look very cluttered. Second is called cluttering. If you see, lot of things have been pushed into the same image. Bordering is not very well. Cluttering is one more issue. And the third would be scale, which we discussed yesterday. That they are not able to express depth, and therefore, issues of scale remain. But if I go to Bodhisattva Padampani or I go to Vajrapani, what I realize is that there is one more set. See, the same things are there. No proper border. You also have the one who holds the lotus in his hand. That is why it's called Bodhisattva Padampani. And you now see 2-3 elements which will become very standard in Buddhist imagery. One is called the half closed meditative or spiritual eyes. Then you are called what is called as the pouted, or rather the protruding lips. And headgear. And one more thing is that they use very dark colors, specifically brown, quite a lot. And therefore, even if you look at Vajrapani, you will realize the same issue, which is dark colors, no bordering, further headgear, thereafter half closed eyes, then protruding lips, and very simply, this will become a standard in Buddhist paintings and imagery. If you go one step further to Ellora, same place, and now we have all the different religions together, we see the same type of ideas which comes to fish eyes are different, but half closed are different. Fish eyes are this. The eyes are fully open. Half closed means this. The eyelids are half. Now, when we go to the Ellora caves, we have the Apsara image. And in the Apsara image, what we see is that the same type of issues remain, which means That at Ellora, the person was again, the culture of painting was the same. Again, very dark colors, no bordering. And if you look at it, half closed eyes. And this is done on a ceiling. This is done on a ceiling. And in a way, what we are able to see that there's a pattern, there's a tradition. And this tradition does not stop here. If I go to another image of Ellora, again you can see the distinct color brown being used properly. But over and above that, again, very dark colors, no proper bordering, and these images in themselves are frescoes, and that is why they've survived for now close to thousands of years. The simple point is that paintings in India, or when we come to cave paintings, somehow the artisans all had the same type of skill set, and it was not impacted by Buddhism, Jainism, or religion. It was impacted by skill set. If I go to Bagh caves, which is again seen as an extension of the Ajanta caves, we see one major differentiation. In Bagh, we again see half closed eyes, meditative eyes. We see the protruding lips or pouting lips, but again use of dark colors. But one more improvement with regards to how Ajanta is made better is that there is proper bordering. Proper bordering emerges. The lips thing is just an aesthetic choice. There's nothing special about it. It's an aesthetic choice. That's it. So what we see is tightly modeled, but better bordered. And by bordering, you can also see that a little bit of depth will also come into the image. A little bit of depth will also come into the image because of the fact that if you look at it, now you can make out which woman is in the front and which one is in the back. In a sense, they are all standing in one sequence or in one line, but their shoulders tell us where they are. That is not possible if there is no bordering in that ring. Now, from Ajanta to Ellora to Bagh, if I go to the Arnamalai caves, which are in Tamil Nadu, pertain to the Jain temples itself, unfortunately, the images are not very clear and also not available on basic what we call as channels. They are Jain caves which are made, the paintings were made in a very obscure section of these caves. They are natural caves. Some of them are actually natural caves. But the fact is, Arnamalai caves, you just have to remember Jain. This will help you generally in answering questions. But here you have the Jainism influence. You have the aesthetic patalkas, which is the protecting eight corners, protecting deities are represented, but not very well. But when we talk about Jain caves, the most important and which was in the news also and came also in the paper because of being in the news for the past 2 years, is called the Sittanavasal caves. These are Pandya era paintings again of the Jain tradition, and we find multiple scenes here from the Samava Sansara, which is called where all the Tirthankas are sitting together and understanding everything, to the great events where bulls and elephants are there. If you look at the Jain images of Sittanavasal, are you able to see the parallels here? Are you able to see the parallels here? In a way, the same exact pattern emerges even though it is Jain and even though it is thousands of kilometers away from Ajanta. In the sense, we again have half closed eyes. We again have dark colors, and we again have the lips which are there. And in that regard, you can see the religion changes, but the pattern does not change. And that is what basically this whole theme is about, which is evolving painting structures, evolving painting models, and how there are certain things which are becoming better and better. Bordering was something which was they were able to resolve. Now we come to a Hindu and Vijayanagara period painting, which is called Lepakshi. Now, Lepakshi temple, or which is basically a old temple in Andhra Pradesh, which basically pertains to the what we call as Virupaksha uh, avatar of Lord Vishnu in that regard, or sometimes also called Veerbhadra temple in that sense. It is a temple where you can see that the way they represent the murals, and these are made on the wall, on the ceiling itself, the way they are making it, there is a very distinct what we call as differentiation from Buddhists. For example, now you see the eyes are totally different. Meenakshi temple is in Madurai, Lipakshi temple is in Andhra Pradesh. And further, yes, the hanging pillar temple, yes. So you have the eyes, which is now made with full open sense. But what is more interesting about Lepakshi is, for some reason, they don't use primary colors. Primary colors means red, blue, and green. But they have a very interesting concept that they will mostly avoid using blue. Mostly avoid using blue. So Ramayana, Mahabharata, and the incarnation of Lord Vishnu are represented in these murals. But as soon as you see the word absence of primary colors, automatically mark it as Lepakshi. Because Lepakshi temple is the only temple where somehow blue is not used quite a lot. Different shades of red is used. But again, why is it not used? It's an aesthetic choice. These are peculiarities which are aesthetic choices made by or taken by the one who is producing it. Now, the last in this whole set, when it comes to caves, is Badami. Now, Badami is again taking the Ajanta Bag tradition forward, but what we can see is that they have now become a little bit lighter in color. In the sense, they are now abandoning that blue, that brown, moving towards yellow more. But again, the standard things, if I show you this image, it will automatically, or it should automatically come to your mind that it is coming from the Ajanta tradition. So what I want to argue, what you need to understand before we go to the Pala and all, which is Pothi tradition, that there is a connection. There's a connection wherein from Ajanta to Ellora to Bag to Badami and even Sittanavasal, what we see is a certain sequence of changes, but also certain aesthetic choices taken by the artist, but also telling us that they are all connected in a way. They're all connected in a way. Now, going away from this mural tradition, which is quite common in the viharas and the chaityas, the next way in which painting tradition was represented in ancient India or the early medieval in that regard is Pala and the Apabhramsa school. Now, the Pala school would be then related to which thematic again? If they are the Palas, what thematic it will be? If they are Palas, it has to be Buddhism. But they are extremely specific with regards to Vajrayanic Buddhism, because the whole Vikramshila University was based on Vajrayanic Buddhism. And they will now basically produce these. These are called pothis. In North India, it is done in the palm leaves. And in South India, there's a specific type of paper which is called vellum paper. Pothis are basically, you would have seen it for sure, again, opens up like this. In landscape, it is made. Pothis are very common in a lot of the different pilgrimage centers which you see generally. The Pothi tradition What they used to do on both sides, they had Abahata, which is the initial or the ancestor of Bengali and all. But in the middle, they used to have Vajrayanic Buddhist images. If Vajrayanic Buddhist images are there, then who is this? Then who is this? Who can you identify who is this if it is Vajrayanic Buddhism? Very good. This is Tara. Because Tara is a bodhisattva who is basically linked to and is considered the central goddess of Vajrayanic Buddhism. Now you can see, because it is Tantra Mantra, the subsidiary images also have a certain type of mysticism to them, Tantra Mantra and ideas. And the fact of the matter is that now this Buddhist imagery, and this is the last time Buddhism was properly represented in any form of architecture, because after this Indo-Islamic architecture will start. The fact is, Vajrayanic Buddhism in a way embodied a lot of things which we saw previously also. So the half closed eyes still remain, the protruding lips still remain, but the color scheme changes quite a lot. Color scheme changes quite a lot. Now, before we go to the what we call as Delhi Sultanate period or the medieval properly, you need to understand that the last major representation vis-a-vis removing the Rajputs from the scene itself is called the Apabhramsa school of art. Apabhramsa school of art, which was very common in the Gujarat, Mewar region itself, what we see is that they are known to revive a lot of the things which we see maybe in Lepakshi, but they will change the thematic totally. Now you will see bright colors, the use of gold color. Over and above that, now you will see the iconic fish eyes, which is a very, very sharp representation of eyes, fish eyes. And thereafter, sharp nose and the iconic double chin, which you can see here of this school. This will become a very common tradition in the Gujarat Malwa sector. But again, you can see that there's an issue of scale. A tiger, a bull, and an elephant are shown in the same scale, which cannot be the case. And even if they are replicas, it is not showing that there is depth. The plane issue is there. The plane issue is there, that it seems that in the same plane itself, depth is not represented very well. But I cannot understand why they cannot draw normal human eyes. What's the issue? Again, painter aesthetic choice. An aesthetic choice. They did not want to make it that way. They found it boring. The simple point is that these are things which are linked to the basic established aesthetics of that period. Somebody would say that how we represent our cartoons or our people, that is also dumb. Our modern art is dumb. So if this is something which you cannot digest, then our art is also dumb. So the simple point is standards of aesthetics, beauty change over a period of time. And this is something which is evolving over a period of time. That is what I'm trying to show you also. That from Ajanta till Apabhramsa, it is not a static development. It is something which keeps on changing and keeps on evolving. Now, no question has come from this area till this point. I don't expect also Apabhramsa is 11th, 15th century, contemporary to the medieval period. Now, what you can expect is Sittanavasal, these Sittanavasal, Arnamalai, Lepakshi, these names will somewhere for sure come through. So what you do is that I already gave you Junar, Pithalkora, Pandavleni, Karle, Ajanta, Udaygiri, Khanderi. You just add to your list of caves Arnamalai, Lepakshi, Lepakshi specifically with reference to what is it known for. They can't ask you to write a whole answer on Lepakshi, but they can sprinkle, and Lepakshi was sprinkled in one of the questions generally. Mains level question could be about changing aesthetic sense, but again, that is somewhere they will either, what they can do is they can ask you the importance of Pala architecture or Pala art, which came, and then one small discussion, one small point may be this, that the Pothi tradition was developed. So very simply, uh, the concept is that the painting traditions in India have been evolving over a period of time. That is it. Yeah, I'm trying to show you images so that you understand it. The real questions actually come from Mughal paintings, from where most of the questions have come already. The class started at 5 o'clock. Okay. Pala Pothi means a book. To remember each and every characteristic, remember the basics. That only at Bagh the issue of bordering was solved. That's it. This weekend. There's a fundamental issue which basically makes paintings very difficult in medieval India. What is the reason? What is the reason? What is the fundamental issue? Lepakshi Vijayanagara. Representation. No, I don't mean issue that ways. I mean representation wise. Islam does not know representation of human or animal form. For a UPSC aspirants, that is good only because then the theme becomes smaller. But the simple point is that Islam does not allow representation of humans or any form of animals. So therefore, paintings itself will be limited. Or the painting tradition will be limited. In that sense, the Delhi Sultanate was very true to it. Because though they had one book only called Niyamat Nama, which is a book on cookery, which is basically a book on how to make food, and for a Lodi Khuladar style, basic, very simple style painting, there was no proper tradition in Delhi Sultanate of paintings. They made a lot of different things, but they were not ready to move beyond just this basic point. So, Niyamat Nama was a book which basically represented how kahwa is made. This is how samosas are made. Basically, Niyamat Nama represents an exception in the whole tradition, where a book in cookery where food is in the focus. They wanted to represent food. But Delhi sultans themselves never had any painters commissioned under them. And if you look at the painting of Niyamat Nama, you automatically realize that they have no issue. They have an issue of depth again, because they want to show this as this. But they're not able to because they don't understand how to represent something like this in 3D. So the basic issues remain, and in that sense, it goes forward. So when it comes to Delhi Sultanate, generally we don't talk about painting tradition, because painting tradition, no contribution generally, because the Delhi Sultans were true to their Islamic origins in that regard, that they never wanted to transgress that. So the real features or the real paintings emerged under the Mughals, who were more Indian than actually, or indigenous than, or Hinduistic than any other Islamic dynasty in India. And Mughals did one thing for sure. Mural tradition went away because murals are very big representations. And the Mughals never represented any form of paintings in the open spaces or the public space. But they had their own smaller tradition, which Akbar started, which is called the tradition of having miniature paintings, which is, it would be close to my palm, not more than my hand, very small paintings only for personal consumption. So the Mughals commissioned a lot of different painters, and that I will tell you how it got institutionalized. Now, Babar obviously did not have the time to do commissioning of paintings and all, but he had one painting made by a person called Bizhad, which was the Mughal family tree, which is his ancestry with Tamanni Khan. That how he is linked to the whole Timurid tradition in that regard. And that is why we know so much about Babar and his ancestry. Now, Humayun, when he was in India, had no orientation towards painting. Rather, a very bookish person, loved his libraries. He actually became very active once the Humayun tradition, when he came back from the Safavid Empire. When he came back from Persia, he had developed a certain love for paintings itself, and he did two things. He is the first one to develop a proper painting studio. I'll give you, as in architecture, a table in the end. A painting studio, which is called the first atelier. Atelier is the what we call as technical terminology for a painting studio itself. And the fact is that he will bring with him two more what are called masters of painting, or painting masters or teachers, Mirza Sayyid Ali and Abdus Samad. These two people will become the pioneers in producing paintings in India. But Humayun only commissioned one major painting, which is called The Princes of the House of Timur in 1550. And this was not done on a canvas or in a miniature style. Unlike that, it was a very big painting done on a tent side. Basically, wherever he used to go to war, on one side of his tent, he used to have this painting. This painting has not survived in full, but you can see that the painting itself has a very strong Central Asian influence, with the color blue being used quite a lot, the white color being used quite a lot, light coloring is there. This is not true for Apabhramsa or what is happening in India at this point of time. This is very Turkish in that regard, wherein you use blue as much as possible, and this is not the tradition which goes forward. The painting itself is actually quite sophisticated. They've been able to resolve a lot of things. There's depth in the image. There is a little bit of 3Dness also in the image, but the paintings made with it were not having the same thing. So it was an exception that way, because we know that this person is in the back, this person is in the front. They were able to make this octagon in the right way. So in that sense, they were able to use their basic skills well. But this tradition does not go forward. It's an exceptional one painting in that regard. It will rather be Akbar who will change everything. See, Akbar was an illiterate man, and he loved his what we call as texts. For example, he had been brought up listening to once something called Tuti Nama, which is the story of a parrot. Then the second one is called Hamza Nama, which is a story of Prophet Muhammad's uncle. Thereafter, he had also heard about the Gulistan. So, what Akbar actually wanted was comic books. Basically, he asked his painters to narrate the story of these texts in painting. And he himself was taught by one of the Persian masters called Abd al Samad, not Abdul Samad. He will be the one who will institutionalize the painting tradition. And what he will produce is two things: karkhanas and tasveer khanas. In these karkhanas and tasveer khanas, what was being done was that he basically employed the painters as proper royal servicemen. And every karkhana used to have 8 to 9 different positions under which people were working. Now, the first major thing, tasveer means tasveer, photo. Khana means place where the tasveers are made, the pictures are made, paintings are made. So the first major text which he commissioned is called Tutinama, and Tutinama is the tale of the parrot. And you can see here the parrot telling a certain tale. 52 parts are there. 250 miniature paintings were made to represent these 52 parts, and this will take close to 5 to 6 years to make. And the 5-year completion means that they were making not more than 50 images in a year, meaning one image in a week in a way. And therefore that ways it was quite heavy work when you try to produce something. Now, if you read Nitin Singhania, he will say that 3Dness developed under Akbar. But if you look at any of the images of Akbar, you will realize that 3Dness was not there. Whilst Tutinama was about a parrot, the story of Hamza Nama, which is the story of Prophet Muhammad's uncle, was even more elaborate, much more images. But by looking at this image, can you say that 3Dness is there? Can you say that the 3Dness is there? No. First is the issue of scale. No proper scale. Second, they are basically making crooked buildings because 3Dness and depth is not there. And I showed you this image yesterday also. They are not able to proportionally represent things. But there is one thing which is happening, which is that if you look at the color scheme of this image and the image by Humayun, you will see more brighter colors are coming in. And specifically, gold is coming in. That means that the Rajasthani and Gujarati influence in the paintings is also now coming in. Now, ironically, most of these images were not made by painters who were Muslims, but actually Hindu painters. 95% of all painters in the Tasveer Khanas and the Karkhanas of Akbar were Hindus and lower caste. Daswant was a very good example of it, who was a very celebrated painter of Akbar, but comes from a very low background, but was commissioned as a mansabdar in his court. So that ways, what Akbar does through commissioning Hamzanama, which is 1400 illustrations, and different other texts which were produced as images. This is called illustrated narrative painting. This is called illustrative narrative painting. And basically, this is the term for comic books. Basically, you want to represent a story in images. And the majority of his painters come from a low caste background. This one being an example, salaried, and other than Akbar, and this has come in the examination, other than Tutinama, Hamzanama, he was the one who also got Gulistan represented, the Darabnama, the Khamza-i-Nizami, the Baristan, and one of the most celebrated of all were produced at Fatehpur Sikri. So Akbar, in these two images can be properly summarized. Akbar, the feat itself tells you that 3Dness is missing. Because when you make 3D legs, or when you make by depth, you make legs like this. You don't make it like this. This is what they've done. This is a portrait of Akbar, yes. Now, though there is no 3Dness, the way it is made tells you the very strong influence of Rajasthani Gujarati style, wherein the color scheme is becoming more and more lighter and brighter. But when I told you about Akbar, I told you Single point perspective is missing. One perspective is having here, one perspective here, one perspective here, one perspective here, one perspective here. That makes the image clutter quite a lot. It's a proper cluttered image. You will never be able to make out generally anything. Now, till Akbar, this issue remains. Till Akbar, this issue remains. And the zenith of all of this will go under Jahangir. But before I go to Jahangir, what I want to do is I'll give you a very, very small little bit of a breather, because what I want you to do is I want you to understand what I've done till this point. I've brought you from Ajanta till Akbar, and I've shown you certain standard things, which is that Ajanta to Arnamalai or Ajanta to Sittanavasal, there's a certain pattern which is being followed. There's a certain what we call as basic element which is being followed. And under Delhi Sultanate, no commissioned painters, and under Delhi, not Delhi Sultanate, but under the Mughals, the most properly produced tasveer or what we call as painting tradition was under Akbar. Are we clear about this? If we are, we take a very, very short breather because rather heavy content, and then we come back and talk about Jahangir, Shah Jahan, Aurangzeb, and finish this module. Small module. No, you can't do a lot in the examination because of the fact that the problem is that you can't show images to the examiner. You can only write it. I will make a simple table to show you what are the basic elements for each of these sultans. We have certain previous year questions to do also, which we'll do. So 5 minutes, 5 7 minutes, basic breather, and we come back again. Right? What should we remember in this topic? Basic elements which I will write in the PPT as a table. I'm trying to show you that to you also so that you understand it. Every image is a miniature. That we don't go by that. Now, Jahangir is the one who made. He's the Shah Jahan of painting in that regard. The highest point of painting in India. And very simply, he was the one who took a lot of interest in how paintings could be made better. And the first thing he did was that, having, other than the bigger ateliers, he had a smaller atelier, a small atelier in which he used to own work himself. But he did not like that illustrative painting type of tradition. These manuscripts produced one after the other about different texts. He is the one who believed more towards portrait paintings, individuals, and he's a naturalist. Natural means that he captures animals quite a lot. And that is why whenever Jahangir used to go to the what we call as hunting expeditions, he used to take a painter with him for sure. Because of that, a lot of different birds and animals which don't exist today were also captured by his painters. And the Jahangir thing is that he will bring in, see, Indian element is already there. There is a Persian influence which is already there. But he will bring in European also. Because if you remember, Thomas Rowe, Hawkins all came to Jahangir's court. And when they came to Jahangir's court, they brought with themselves a whole set of gifts. And the one set of gifts in that regard were actually the concept of a globe and a spectacle in that regard. Now, globes and the idea of a globe fascinated Jahangir quite a lot. And in his Jahangirnama and thereafter other commissioned, what we call as paintings, European elements will become more and more evident. He will solve the issue of depth. He will solve the issue of what we call as basic 3Dness. And his paintings had also what is called as a decorated border. This is something which he again started. He will represent animals in the best way possible. Very naturalistic image, very, very beautifully represented. Till today, miniature paintings of the Mughals, which basically pertain to Jahangir, sell for lakhs of amount. But sir, Islam no represents of human and animals. Go and say that to Jahangir. But sir, drawing not allowed. As I said, go and say that to Jahangir. That you, Jahangir, the Emperor of India, cannot make animal imagery. He is not making himself. His Hindu painters are. But if you go by that, how can he employ a person who is representing a person or anything else? You didn't say the same thing for Akbar somehow. But okay, no issues. The simple point is, go and say that to Akbar and Jahangir. That you, the ruler of the Indian subcontinent, do not have the right to produce any of the images. The most Islamic of all these rulers, Aurangzeb, also had to make a portrait of his wife, because when the wife says something, you have to do it. So the simple point is, Jahangir will start to show proper European painting and influence and the perspectives of what we call as European painters. And therefore, we will now start to see a distinct type of imagery itself. Firstly, you can see these are angels. It's a very strong European element. Thereafter, he started to use the halo quite a lot. Halo, which is basically an aura behind him. Then, because he had seen the globe for the first time, representing the earth and the globe was something which Jahangir loved. But how do we know that this belongs to which ruler? Kumar, you can't read it, but there are inscriptions on each of these paintings which say who that ruler is. So they will have a different small, in the side it will have an inscription saying that this is Jahangir and this and that. All of them have it. So the paintings have legends. Now, this image of Jahangir in that regard is quite important, because now depth comes in. Which is the shoulder which is in the front? One or two? Which is in the front? One. And that you're able to make out because of the fact that depth is there. Because depth is there. But Jahangir went overboard with this idea of European influence. You can see his angel part still remains. Halo is still there. But you see, he is literally standing on a globe and his name is Jahangir. जो जहान पे रूल करता है उसको जहांगीर कहते हैं. The one who rules over the Jahan, Jahangir. So now he had this idea of holding the globe in his hand. That I am Jahangir. He literally took it that he is the Jahangir, and because he had seen the globe, he wanted to represent the globe itself. You can see the hourglass here. Again, something given. In this image, there is one foreigner. Who is that foreigner? 1, 2, 3, or 4? 1, 2, 3, or 4? 2. And that is basically Thomas Rowe. That is Thomas Rowe, distinct European influence of how he is dressed up. But you can see he is symbolically representing sitting on time itself. But we believe that the highest point of Mughal paintings was reached here, wherein we have a portrait of a portrait of a portrait. Meaning, this is Jahangir holding an image of Akbar, and because his both hands are not totally taken, the Jahan is now held by his father, Akbar. Now, this type of painting was not possible previously. And that is why Jahangir is called in a way, the master of painting in that regard. It means Mughals had knowledge of the globe. The Europeans had the knowledge of the globe. They gave him the globe. Yeah, and thereafter Mughals knew they were the Ottoman Empire, but the whole idea came through. Now you can see that this perspective of looking at each other, this is a very Europeanish thing to have a portrait in your hand. But the basic point is the color scheme is light. The representation is beautiful. 3Dness is there. Depth is there. Realism is there. And the picture itself also represents a certain type of understanding, which is beautifully represented in the way we see it right now. Now, this is why Jahangir just gave up on the idea of having narratives, rather portraits there. And in that sense, Jahangir took it to one step forward from Akbar. And I'll give you what to write in the examination in one slide. Now comes Shah Jahan. Shah Jahan could not add anything. He's more known for architecture, but he knew how to waste money. And the wasting of money was that he said that I want the borders with gold plating and leaves, gold leaves attached to it. So he rather went one step forward. Rather than not changing the basic thematic remains the same, single portraits, he made it more decorative, embellishment, gold added. And in his one of the texts produced by during his reign, Padshahnama, the fact is the painter had become such a big expert that they were basically making even portraits of the servants in that regard. The simple point is, when you look at this image of Shah Jahan, you can see 3 to 4 elements also which are there in architecture. You can see the Rajasthani Jali. You can see in a way the arabesque. Thereafter, halo, angels, The fact is, there is depth in the image. The fact is, sir, are those angels? Yes, the standard Christian imagery of angels. He's taken up by Shah Jahan also. So he's taken it to a high point. This is halo means an aura. This is the image which was made under Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb, obviously, what he did was he decommissioned all these. He decommissioned all the karkhanas. He said that you cannot make it because it is un-Islamic. But by the time we come to this is Rabi al-Duran, which is the wife of Aurangzeb. Now they have actually taken up proper European style. Because now she's not looking here, she's looking outwards. This is a very standard European thing in that regard. But the real masterpiece was actually commissioned by Roshanara when this is called the passing of Shah Jahan. And this painting is the most interesting representation of how paintings had literally become like pictures. What he decommissioned, the karkhanas, the painters. You can see the Taj Mahal. You can see Peter Dura. You can see that there are 3 to 4 different pillars here, but you can understand where it is. You have the moon represented here. And this is the moment when Shah Jahan actually passed away. The fact is, this image represents how painters had become so good in representation that they were able to express different types of perspectives also and different types of realism. The more real they become, the more important they become. Are we clear? Baldev, that is part of an assemblage. This is the only part which is relevant to you. It's taken from an image which has others also. Now Aurangzeb, obviously, bitter note in executing any form of real, what we call as a painting tradition itself. But the loss of the Mughals, wasn't he in Andaman jail, sir? Shah Jahan. If you are somehow referring to Bahadur Shah Zafar was not sent to Andaman, Rangoon. So, any Mughal who died in Andaman, I am not sure. So, which Andaman Nicobar Island you are referring to? This is not. No. Okay. Loss of Mughals, but making his wife painting was not un-Islamic. Ladalo jaake. You go and argue this. She said, I want a portrait. Aurangzeb said, it is un-Islamic. She said, I don't care. And he had to make the painting. There will come a time when you will realize what I'm saying. Sure. Okay. Now, loss of Mughals is the gain of Rajput kings. Why these compulsions with respect to their wives? Why this compulsion of kings with respect to their wives? King का कोई relationship नहीं है. Compulsion and wives don't go together. It's not only kings, it's everybody. There will come a time you will understand what I'm trying to say. Now, what I mean loss to Mughals is the gain of Rajput kings is because now the Rajputs in dozens took the decommissioned painters into their own fold in that regard. And this in turn produced multiple schools in Rajasthan, which were basically Mughal painters making portraits for the Rajput kings. Now, do the Rajputs have the same compulsion of only producing miniature paintings? No. And therefore, we come full circle. We started at mural, we went to small miniature paintings, and by the time we come to the Rajasthani schools, again murals are there, because there is no real compulsion with regards to the concept of not making big areas. So the chief theme of Rajasthani paintings is now Ramayana, Mahabharat, and they have no issues of not making it in big places, so they will make it on palace walls, inner chambers. The color scheme of Rajput paintings will also now come out, and they will use as much as precious stones and precious metal as possible, because they were prosperous, if not the Mughals were prosperous. Now, there are multiple schools, but only one school never had Mughal influence, which is Mewar. Mewar never went into Mughal influence, and therefore there was no Mughal influence generally. Now, let's talk about Amber, Bikaner, and Bundi Kota Kalam. Now, when we talk about Amber and Jaipur, you will see that there are two images which are there in the Jaipur, the Amber and the Jaipur fort itself. And if you look at this image, you will realize this is a blend of Hinduistic thematic plus Mughal influence of paintings. So you can see how the color scheme is quite Mughal, but it is a representation of Lord Ganesha. Same way, they now had the idea. They have now had the idea of painting the corners of a fort with proper representation of plants and this beautiful form of calligraphy which they used to do in the forts itself. This comes from the Amber and Jaipur painting tradition, and this has bold configurations, meaning big configurations, very big paintings, but with strong what we call as Mughal influence. Then comes the Bikaner school. When we talk about the Bikaner school, this is the representation of the Govardhan Parvat. The Govardhan Parvat, which is Lord Krishna holding the Govardhan Parvat on his small finger, so as to save from Lord Indra, who is basically making it rain so much that there was a need to go under a certain type of shade. Now, in this also, what you will see, thematic is quite Indian, quite Hinduistic, but the representation, the color scheme, how it is represented, with the way the depth is shown, the ideas, all come from the Mughal painting tradition and Mughal expertise. But the best example of how we can see a certain influence of Mughals is the Bundi Kota Kalam school. Does this resemble a painting which we saw just 5 to 10 minutes back? Does this painting have a certain... Yes. Now, this is a portrait of a lady holding a mirror. Mirror means that the European influence is known. But it was a Jahangir holding Akbar's portrait. Here, exact same thematic is there. But now they can represent the true form in a mirror. Therefore, she is represented in true form. Now, this type of imagery, this type of expertise to show a person in a mirror, first make an image of that person and then make a smaller image of that person, exactly same, is out of the world. Is out of the world and actually not known anywhere else in the world itself. And this is why the Aurangzeb did actually India a favor by allowing the karkhanas and tasveer khanas to actually open up and decommissioned. Then now these painters were not bound by Islamic notions, but rather the Rajputs gave them as much freedom as possible to make what they wanted to make. And in that sense, the Kishangarh school will produce the masterpiece called Bani Thani. Kishangarh school. Now, if Taj Mahal is called the culmination of Indo-Islamic culture, this is the culmination. Bani Thani is the culmination. That was the most celebrated image in India. Culmination of the Indian painting tradition. Indian painting tradition. Now, people tend to call Bani Thani the Mona Lisa of India, but I would not use that word because Mona Lisa is actually a very, very bad looking woman and she has no real merit also. She should be called the Bani Thani of France and the other way around. So there's no comparison between the two women, and in that regard, I will refrain from using that word. Bani, she's the Mona Lisa, as it is more. She's actually that image is quite overrated in that regard. Now, Bani Thani of Kishangarh school, you can see the culmination processes. For example, you can see fish eyes plus half closed eyes. You can see the sharp nose of Apabhramsa. You can see that the jewelry is Mughal jewelry. Thereafter, the wheel is shown in such a way that you can see through it. This is a technique used under Jahangir. And the color scheme is Rajasthani. And then comes the lotus. One second. Lotus, Bodhisattva Padampani, lotus connection. And in that sense, the Bani Thani image produced, which is Radha basically, in the Kishangarh school, is a synthesis of Mughal and local styles together. So if she should be Radha, yes, she is Radha, but this painting is called Bani Thani. Now, if somebody asks you which is the highest point of architecture, you say Taj Mahal. Which is the highest point of painting, you said Bani Thani. Right? Bani Thani in that regard is a culmination of whatever we've done till this point. Now, Marwar school is an example of the Rangmala painting tradition which is there. We'll discuss this when we'll discuss the current affairs related to Rangmala. And it is only the Mewar school which had no influence of Mughals because Maharaja Pratap always fought and made sure that Mughal influence would not come through. With Bani Thani, our basic discussion of Mughal paintings is done. Now, the last two painting traditions which are left in India is Tanjore painting and Mysore painting. Tanjore, how Bani Thani is what have done till now. So either you don't know what we've done till this point, because Apabhramsa school, Buddhist influence plus Mughal influence plus Rajasthani all come together. Now, Tanjore painting is one of the most expensive painting tradition in India today, which is basically gold-plated images of Lord Krishna in the childhood, and very simply, Mewar, simple, straightforward, no Mughal influence, produce its own style in that regard. Don't have to do a thesis on each one of them because then it will become too heavy to manage, and they are not asking questions also. Now, the Marathas were the first to patronize it after the Nayaks, the Tanjore Nayaks were basically defeated. So the Vijayanagara period started, Nayaks used to take it, then the Marathas took it forward. The uniqueness is very bright pattern colors, but is actually gemstones and gold. The gold element which you see here is actually gold, and the small red color dots which you see are actually ruby. They use real precious stones, and that is why Tanjore painting is quite popular but also very expensive. Very, very expensive to own because the Sarfarozi Maharaj, who's the one who actually properly made it a school, actually made it a very, very lustrous and very expressive of this luxury of owning a Tanjore painting. But nowadays you just don't have Lord Krishna, you have animal, birds and buildings also. But Tanjore painting in that regard is one parallel tradition which came from the Tanjore sector under the then for every school 2 to 3 points more than sufficient. Then you have Mysore painting. Mysore painting tradition is basically known for its very heavy usage of green color. But I am teaching Mysore painting for very simple people. Simple reason, because they can ask you a word called gesso paste. Gesso paste is that if you've ever seen a canvas, it is basically a cloth, but that cloth is made very, very, very hard. And that hardness of cloth comes out of a gesso paste, which is basically zinc oxide and Arabic gum is applied to make it hard. Now, the Mysore paintings, again thematic Krishna Bhakti and Ramayana Mahabharat, but they use green quite a lot in that regard. Now, with this, we finish our first half of discussion, which is basically paintings, and we will go to sculpture. But before we do that, what I want to do is I want to give you a table like I gave you for architecture, for paintings, for the Mughal period, because the questions are coming from that area. We'll do previous year questions and thereafter we'll move to sculpture. Can we do that? Yes? Okay. In the examination, they will ask you a sweeping evolution. So if you add all these points, it will become 150. or 250, as much as you want. You can add 2-3 points more, which I've generally told you, 3Dness, this and that. You can go to the National Gallery for Modern Art. It will have everything. Done? Done? This can answer any prelims question. This can answer any mains question. If you know English, just elaborate on any of these points and you will tell it. No mirror image in Jahangir? No. No. Once mirror is used painting, is mirror used in painting a European influence? Yes, yes, yes. We were never good with glass. Spectacles, mirrors, globe, hourglass, all these Europeans. Jahangir's forward, you already have the Portuguese sitting, so they will also bring in a lot of things. What is after Rajputs gain the Mughal painters? Let's do the previous year questions. Can we move forward? Okay. Let me see if you can do them or not. I have previous year questions here. Yes. Okay. Mains questions by the next class. Some Buddhist rock-cut caves are called chaityas, while other are called viharas. What is the difference between the two? Vihara is a place of worship, while chaitya is a dwelling place of monks. Chaitya is a place of worship, while vihara is a dwelling place of monks. Chaitya is a stupa at the far end of the cave, while vihara is a hall axial to it. There's no material difference between the two. The physical mirror itself is brought in by Europeans. Rajasthani, the mirror painting, there's no answer for that question. There's no documented proof with regards to that. 70% totally correct, 15% confused, 12% have no idea. 3%, if there was no difference, then why would they ask a question? Okay. Chaitya is a place of worship. Vihara is a place where monks live. Yes, correct. This is the opposite of it. I told you Chaitya is a hall where they worship and Vihara is where they live. This is actually a dumb option. The person had actually did not have anything to write. That is why he gave the C option. Stupa at the end of the cave is called Chaitya. That cannot be. That is called a stupa. Stupa is called a stupa. So this is just randomly given to distraction. This is an opposite of B. This is again because the examiner made a question. Then he realized that there are no options to write. So he came up with these basic random statements C and D. That is the basic point. Now, with reference to the history of Indian rock cut architecture, consider the following. The caves at Badami are the oldest surviving rock cut caves in India. The Barabar rock cut caves were originally made for the Ajiviks by Chandragupta Maurya. At Ellora, caves of different faiths are there. Which of the following are correct? With you. Try to answer these type of questions, you will get 31, 15, 16. Okay. Ellora has caves of different faith. Now, Barabar rock cut caves were given to Ajiviks by Chandragupta Maurya. He's a Jain. Badami are the oldest caves. The name of these caves are given in the next statement itself. Not Bhimbedkar. Come on here. Bhimbedkar is a prehistoric cave. The cave oldest rock cut. It says rock cut caves, not natural caves. Rock cut caves, the name is given in the second statement itself. Also, it was not made for Ajiviks. Who told you that, Kumar? It was made for Ajiviks only. Barabar and Nagarjuni hill complexes to Ajiviks. Are you running a parallel class or something? I said it is Ajiviks. It is Ajiviks. Made for Ajiviks means donated to Ajiviks. अगर इंग्लिश में फंस जाओगे, originally made for Ajiviks meaning donated to Ajiviks. Then oldest cave is Barabar and Nagarjuni hill complex. See, again, the problem with most of you is you try to become ISRO scientists when it comes to questions. First is it says rock cut cave. Means it has to be man-made cave. Oldest natural cave will not be Bhimbedkar. Oldest natural cave, how will you get to know? You will go to every cave and do C14 dating. Oldest natural cave in Bhimbedkar is asking you which was the first cloud which was formed in India. Tell me. You're basically asking me the name of the first person who came to India. If you read somewhere in Nitin Singhania, then Nitin Singhania, that is why problematic. Oldest natural caves, why would it be Bhimbedkar? It could be Lakhudiyar also. It could be Lakhudiyar. Look at the questions properly. Rock cut caves. You all try to confuse yourself. The question is straightforward. But you will confuse yourself. The answer to the first statement is given in the second statement. The second statement is incorrect because it is Ashoka and Dasharath. And the third statement is correct. Can we move to the next question? Stupa. Where do you find mural paintings? Stupas don't have murals. Okay. With this, we'll do these questions in the end of the class. I see you around 7 Read it and I'll push the poll. Which of the following statements is correct? Ajanta cave lies in the gorge of Vogharo river or Voghora river. Sachi Stupa lies in the gorge of Chambal river. Pandavleni cave shrine is in the gorge of Narmada river. Amravati Stupa lies in the gorge of Godavari river. Come on. B or D? I have an issue with you, not A and C. C. Stupas were strategically placed or they were placed in obscure places? They were placed strategically or in obscure areas? They are mostly on trade routes. So why would you have stupas in the gorge of a river? Meaning you make a what we call as stupa inside a gorge. So to get out. Ajanta is Voghor. I showed you that horseshoe design also. I showed you the river also, the separate issue. This we've done directly. But other than that, Pandavleni caves is Nasik caves. Does the Narmada river go from Nasik? This is again a very static geography question in that regard. Again, no. So get the answer. So either you understand the simple point, everybody can answer A because that is the answer. We did it. CSP means Civil Services Police Examination 21, set C, question number 59. Okay, 2021 paper. Now, who among the following Mughal emperors shifted the emphasis from illustrated manuscripts to album and individual portraits? Gulam, what I'm trying to say is stupas will never be placed inside gorges. They will not be obscure. They will be on trade routes. So if gorge is used for stupa, it will never be correct. Now you tell me what should I do? Given you half an hour to think, realize, understand. Still, 23% are putting Akbar. Illustrated manuscripts is Akbar. Individual portrait is Jahangir. Now you tell me, are these questions difficult? No. This is 2019. This is 2021. Last question. Related to, not little, these are not difficult questions. This is directly easiest question possible if you know your Buddhism. With reference to the Indian history, who among the following is a future Buddha yet to come save the world? Avalokeshwar, Lokeshwar, Maitri, Padampani. Okay. After this leaderboard. No, we can do one more. Gulam, yes, the state matters. Mostly caves and all states matter. See, for the 20%, Padampani, Lokeshwar, Avlokeshwar, the same person. Maitreya is the Bodhisattva who will come as the form of new future Buddha. But that is not even the point. Avalokeshwar is the real name. Lokeshwar in Theravada. Padampani, I showed you. Bodhisattva Padampani. It's 2018. Very easy question. If you do not get, if we don't get more than 85% here, then we stop here only. The well-known painting Banithani belongs to Bundi, Jaipur, Kangra, Kishangarh school. Remember, 85% and we stop. What are the all important schemes that we need to remember? Whatever is mentioned in the PPT is important. Beautiful. एक होता है गजनी इफेक्ट. This is Gajni effect squared. Bani Thani belongs to Kishangarh school. Same class. Within half an hour you don't remember. अब बताओ क्या करें? The people who marked the first two, A and B, I don't know what are you thinking. No idea whatsoever. No idea whatsoever. Rajasthan, Jaipur. That is the logic. See, this is not how you go forward. Nikhil, Girish, Nisha, Basanti, Pallavi, Chandranath, Neha, Shaimil, Ritu, Karthik, Anushri, thereafter Shabir, Abhishek, Shomo, Abhijit, Divya, Pooja, Chaitanya, Femina, Shipra, Vivek Bhushan. There would be more people with 70. It only shows the first 20-25 as per the pace. Fastest finger first. Can I start sculpture on the note that you can't remember within 45 minutes? That is the unfortunate part here. Okay. We have finished module number 3 and you are entering module number 4. Sculpture has basically 3 parts. The first sculpture we discuss is Harappan or IVC. So there is no prehistoric sculpture which exists. Thereafter you have, after sculpture, we will go to post-Maurya, which is the most important discussion. Amravati, Gandhara, and Mathura. And the last is called Chola sculpture, which is basically the bronze statues. Three basic parts are there. Now, the first discussion we have is of the Harappan civilization or the Indus Valley civilization. Now, there are two things which you need to understand here basically. One is called material diversity. The second one is called technique diversity. Meaning, when it came to sculpture or art or expression, they have material diversity in the sense that they are using terracotta. Terracotta is basically clay which has been made solid. Thereafter, you have what we call as copper. Then we have bronze. We have gold and silver. And we also have one more thing, which is ceatite, which is basically called soapstone. Basically soapstone. Thereafter, when we talk about technique diversity, first would be jewelry, toys, sculpture in the form of statues. We also have seals, we have beads, and we also have day-to-day objects. Day-to-day objects. So when they ask you a question with regards to Indus Valley civilization, they will mostly revolve around this. That when it comes to the IVC, is it a unidimensional or is it a multi-dimensional sculptural tradition? And herein, we have both types of diversity, different techniques, different used for different materials. And therefore, that creates a whole assemblage, a whole story of different forms of what we call as materials and techniques used across the civilization. The first is bronze. And in bronze, we see a method which till today survives and has its origin in 3000 BCE, which is called the lost wax technique or the Sir Pardu technology, which was used commonly to produce copper objects, even silver objects, and bronze objects. But the most known of these was the Danziger, which is called the Mohenjo-daro Danziger. Now, the lost wax technique is something which is used here. It will be used by the Cholas. It is till today used. Now, the idea is very simple. Why is it called lost wax? Because what you do is that you make a wax model of something. You make a wax model of something. Thereafter, you mold it into a certain clay. Then, as it says here, you heat it. When you heat wax, what happens? It melts. When it melts, you take out the wax from it. So what will be left is basically a mold which was previously in wax. And then you pour the metal into it and then you break the mold. So what you get is basically the object in bronze. That's why it's called lost wax technique. Because we lose the wax in the process, it's called lost wax technique. This technique was common during this period and will be taken generationally forward by different artisans, and somehow the Cholas were still using, imperial Cholas were still using this technique, which shows you the persistence and the effectiveness of this method itself. So through this we were seeing copper, silver and bronze objects being made, but we also have pure copper also. This is copper, these are copper. How do we know it is copper? Can anybody tell me? These are called copper toys made by lost wax technique. We know it is copper because of the green color which is on there. Green color, copper oxide mostly takes the green color. So oxidization, the rust of copper is basically in green color. Now, these copper toys were made by lost wax technique. Lost wax technique in which you make the wax object. So they made a wax object like this, put it into a mold, heated the mold, wax was started to melt, took it out, poured copper, and then they got this. Now, very simply, this is not the only manifestation of their understanding. Their next manifestation is that they were also making stone and terracotta objects. Terracotta is basically clay, what you find outside in your house. That is basically sand and clay. Take that clay, make it a little bit what we call as damp, give it shape, and then you put it into a bhatti or into an oven. What you will get is terracotta. So, how do we know that it is made by lost wax technique? Because there are certain signs in which the way it is made, there are certain indicators which a sculptor can tell you is lost wax technique or not. So that is the expertise of the sculptor to figure it out how it is made. So you have stone sculpture, you have ceatite sculptures, you also have red sandstone sculpture, you also have terracotta images, and terracotta images from the mother goddess. This is terracotta image of mother goddess, to the bearded priest, which is basically ceatite. And very simply, they didn't stop here. Basic terracotta figurines are representing day-to-day objects also. For example, we have the different types of animals represented. We have even games represented. And we have humans also represented in terracotta. Terracotta is the most ubiquitous, means most readily available thing which they had. And by just giving a little bit of heat, they make their what we call they take up that mold in that regard or that shape. I think some of you or most of us would have played this game in our pencil boxes when we were children, wherein this is a standard game which does not even exist, does not exist today, but was very common 10 to 15 years back. So very simply, from the die or from the dice to these basic toys, we get a glimpse into the world of the Harappans. Now, ceatite could be used to make something like this. But ceatite has one more use, and that use is to make seals. These are called seals. Now, these seals are not currency. They are rather stamps, which used to represent different objects and different forms of animals. And most common is the humpless bull, which is a very interesting thing. Bulls come with humps today, but when we talk about the evolutionary process, humpless bull was the most common. Now, this is the so-called unicorn seal. Now, this is a term which has been given by the Europeans to this seal. Unicorn is a mythical horse which has one horn on its head, and therefore they basically represented this seal as a unicorn seal. We have other seals also, wherein you have the bull seal, you have the rhinoceros, you have the again bull, you have the humpless bull, you have the elephant. But this one is the most remembered with certain inscriptions which we don't know what it means. This is called unicorn because it is believed that it has one basic horn. Now the question is, does a unicorn exist? No. Why is it that we can only see one horn? Most probably, firstly, this is not a horse. First thing. Second thing, it is a 2D image sideways. But what they did was that they superimposed the horns on one each other. something like this. If I do it something like this, how many hands do I have? How many hands do I have? How many hands do I have? One. But basically it represents two. So that is the basic assumption, that the head was made in such a way that the horns were superimposed on each other. So if you look it from the side, it basically looks like one, but it is actually two. It's not one, it is two. Same way, most probably the second horn is also here, but they made it so well that it looks like there's only one horn. Now, very simply, do you still call it something else? No. You call it unicorn seal itself, because simply the categorization is like that. So for the purpose of the examination, is this a unicorn? Yes, it is. But basically unicorns don't exist. So it's a standard thing which they've done, and the British do it. They misinterpret quite a lot. This is John Marshall's childhood in front of you in that regard. But seals are again made out of what is called ceatite. It's hard, but also it is soft enough to put in these basic engravings into it. So we've seen seals, we've seen day-to-day objects, we've seen bronze, we've seen copper, we've seen terracotta, we've seen ceatite. Now comes another manifestation, which is beads. Again, I'm trying to show you these things. Whatever really is the basic conversation, I've already had it with you, which is technique diversity and material diversity. Now here, beads were basically found in the Gujarat coast and that whole coastal sector quite a lot, and they were using even precious stones such as amethyst, jasper, crystal, and lapis lazuli to make beads. But in the beads, the most difficult thing is basically to make a hole in something. If you can make a hole in something, then you have already succeeded in doing what you want to do. So basically, what we see is that they had a piercing technique in such a way that the whole hole existed. The hole existed even without breaking the bead. This is where their technique comes through, that they knew how to make a hole on through it without breaking the bead. That is something again quite interesting, that we today use basic machines to do it, but they were doing it through hand and they were able to make beads. And when we talk about their skill, we can go one step further to see gold and silver jewelry being produced by these men and women. And very simply, we have seen that ornaments, and this is what was found. This ornament set was actually buried with a person. That is why it has survived so well. And very simply, from earrings to necklace to griddles to basic chokers and all, everything is there, from bangles. And this means that men and women both were using it, and men and women were generally using it in that regard. The simple point I'm trying to show you here, again, my basic purpose is to show you what we call as craft diversity. In Harappan pottery also, we have pottery which has different forms of engravings, different forms of what we call as decoration, and the way they made pottery is also quite unique. But the simple point before we go to schools of art is the fact which I made in the beginning. The Harappans are not a unidimensional aspect of their, or not unidimensional when it comes to craft diversity. They are very, very good in manipulating different materials and in manipulating different techniques. Are we clear? Because here I am going to give you a 5-minute breather and we do the most important discussion, which is schools of art. Beads is about piercing. They had piercing techniques. We take a very small breath, because after it, very important discussion, Amravati and Mathura and Gandhara. Yes, terracotta cultures can be made by hand. They can be made by hand. Yes. Okay. So it's 36. We come back at 41. Now, we started at IVC. Vedic, we did not find anything. Mahajanapadas, and Mauryas, whatever techniques were developing, culminate in what are called the post-Mauryan schools of art. Now, there are three basic schools of art. One is Gandhara, Mathura, and Amravati. And Monday is not a holiday. I don't think so. Monday is a holiday. Monday, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. So you have Gandhara, Mathura, Amravati, and Gandhara is northwestern India. Takshila, Peshawar, etc. Thereafter, Mathura is northern India, with Mathura as the main area, but basically Doab region. Amravati would be Deccan and South India, which is basically the Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, northern Karnataka area, but it's not specific to this area, it's all of it. And the first school to develop was Mathura. First to become popular and common, meaning though Mathura was before Gandhara, Gandhara became very popular very quickly. And Gandhara, by now, basic idea, you tell me one thing. Gandhara location is northwestern India. Which post-Mauryan dynasty would have the strongest influence on Gandhara? Or would be influenced by Gandhara? Very good. Indo-Greeks and Kushanas patronized. Mathura would be then Shungas, Kushanas, and Amravati would be Satavahanas and other regional kingdoms. Thereafter, you have the concept of this is Buddhism or Buddhist imagery, and you have Greek and Buddha's images. So Mahayanic Buddhism. Whilst on the other hand, Mathura is Buddhist, Jain, Hinduistic, and last but not the least, which is secular imagery or related to political images. And here again, it is Hinayanic Buddhism, which was mostly the thematic initially. Therefore, what is implied is this has a Greco-Roman influence. And in Mathura, there are two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is indigenous. Phase 2 is when when Gandhara influence starts to come under the Kushanas. Kushanas consolidate this whole sector, so Gandhara influence comes. Amravati is fully indigenous. Fully indigenous. These are the basic points which you should remember about Gandhara, Mathura, Amravati. Are these clear to you? Are these clear to you? Yes? Perfect. Now, we have to understand Gandhara and its basic characteristics. When we talk about Gandhara and its basic characteristics, there are certain things which are associated with Gandhara. You have Gandhara, what is called bluish gray sandstone. Bluish gray sandstone with the use of stucco for detailing. Stucco is basically plaster of Paris. Later becomes plaster of Paris, which you see in your houses. They make certain type of molds. That is stucco. It's Greek plaster of Paris. Thereafter, there's a distinct imprint of Greco-Roman art on Gandhara. That being, in these sculptures, we see half closed eyes, halo, forehead lines, draping is or clothing is Greek, stoic face or expressionless face, and elongated ears and curly hair. When we look at any imagery of the Gandhara school, which was developing between first century BC to 4th century CE, patronization by the Indo-Greeks has a Greco-Roman influence on it. Takshila, Peshawar, Bamiyan Buddha or Belgram hold this sector will see something like this. Main theme Buddha, Bodhisattva, bluish grey sandstone. But it is a very interesting thing that we have a proper Greco-Roman influence on these things. Halo, wavy hair or curly hair. And thereafter we have half closed eyes, earlobes are big, forehead lines, ornamentation and draping. Now this is a example of a Gandhara art. Now you can see all of these things at play. You have the halo, you have the elongated ears, thereafter you have draping, which is Greco-Roman. Then you have the iconic curly or wavy hair. Thereafter, the half closed eyes, and if you look at his face, it is mostly expressionless. Expressionless or stoic. If you go to the image which is called the meditating Buddha or the starving Buddha, the level of detailing is exceptional. Draping means how he is holding this. Draping means clothing. Draping. Here again, halo, half closed eyes, expressionless, elongated ears, curly hair. If I go one step further and try to analyze another set of images, you will get the Greco-Roman jewelry, expressionless, half closed eyes, the wavy hair, elongated ears, the draping which you see here, halo was there, has been destroyed, and there are forehead lines also. And this is something very specific, which is it shows a certain age of Buddha. It shows a certain age of Buddha, which is the concept of forehead lines. For the second image looks like smiling. Sure, this is still smile is like this, but okay, whatever you want to see, you will see it. There's no issue. So very simply, when we talk about again wavy hair, the knotted hair, which is the curly hair, halo, draping, elongated ears, forehead lines, half closed eyes, no real expression, and standing also. The simple point is that that is not snails. That is basically not wavy. When you have curly hair, you can also braid it. That's called braiding of hairs. That is braided hair. So this is basically Gandhara for you. Gandhara, any question and a mains question came in where you basically have to put in the following points. Is Gandhara clear? If you remember Gandhara, Mathura will automatically be clear. Is Gandhara clear? Yes. Thereafter, when we go to Mathura, again, same set of things. This is a very Greco-Roman type of what we call as jewelry, plus the wavy hair, standard things. In every image, you will find the same basic ideas. Now, when we go to Mathura, Mathura is known for what is called white spotted red sandstone. White spotted red sandstone, wherein the red sandstone has small white spots, and it has phase 1 in which it will have its own features, and it has phase 2 in which it will get a lot of elements. First I want to show you that to you, thereafter we'll write it down. Now this is an example of two images which represent certain first phases and second phase influences. Now whatever I'm marking in yellow is basically first phase, wherein this is first phase, which is called the Abhay Mudra. Abhay Mudra, or what we call as Ashirvad Mudra. Very standard thing which you will find here. Thereafter, you find that he is smiling, which is with expression, which is smiling. Thereafter, you can see here non-curly hair and one more thing, which is open eyes. Open eyes. Rather, I should mark it on this one. This is half closed, later expression. This one. Open eyes. Thereafter, you can see that the clothing is also different. And there are also subsidiary images. There are subsidiary images. And now if I actually talk about the next set, so we can write it down here. We have non-curly hair, expression of Buddha, which is smiling. Thereafter, we also have bare-chested or non-draped Buddha. Thereafter, we also have the concept of open eyes. Then we have Abhe Mudra and subsidiary images. But now when I go to the second phase, when Kushanas will take over the Mathura school, now you see that the whole set will change. You see, what is this? Halo, phase 2 comes through. Thereafter, elongated ears will come in. Then if you look at the draping here, the draping is Greco-Roman. The half-closed eyes also come through. And in that regard, there are certain things which permeate into the Mathura school. Some people say that which we see on the top is lumps, not hair. Then what they mean, I have no idea what they mean, what you mean, and I don't know who these people are. Okay. Now, what is taken from influence? Hinayana is a branch of Buddhism. Does Hin Jati refer to? No. Hinayana, Mahayana. Maha मतलब बड़ा, Hin मतलब छोटा. कहाँ चलेगा भाई? Influence of Greco-Roman art. Herein we have 3 to 4 things. Curly hair, half-closed eyes. How did I mark curly hair? This. No. Five. Is this phase 2 part of Mathura only? Yes. Curly hair, half-closed eyes, halo, and draping, along with elongated ears. These elements are now added in the second phase. Abhay Mudra is first phase. Are you clear? How Mathura sees a first phase and a second phase? Fully indigenous. And this is indigenous plus Gandhara. Forehead lines in some case and in some cases not. Forehead lines is in between. In some cases, there's no consistency with regards to that. Some books will say forehead line, but that is not true fully. Clear, everybody? Can I talk about the other images then? Now, other than this, we also have the Kushana rulers represented in what we call as, this is Kanishka, headless Kanishka and Huvishka. Now, headless because over a period of time, these things were destroyed. But Kanishka and Huvishka tell you that they were using boots, they were wearing coats, and therefore, what I mean by that is that political imagery tells us the clothing style of that period. The clothing style of that period. So Mathura that way is quite diverse because forehead lines is there in Gandhara. In some cases, Mathura is also there, but mostly we don't see it as a Gandhara feature. Yashwant, don't confuse yourself and then try to confuse me also. Forehead line, straightforward Gandhara feature. Thereafter, we move to Amravati. Now, Amravati is the most unique. Amravati is the most unique because phase 2 is the copy of Gandhara. Obviously, मैं बोल रहा हूँ Gandhara is added. You are saying that it is a copy of Gandhara. Are you listening to what I'm saying? I'm saying Gandhara influence is coming into Mathura. And you're asking me is a copy. Obviously, it will be a copy. Because phase 2, Gandhara influences start to come to the original elements. This does not mean that the original elements go anywhere. It's just that these elements are now seen. Are we understanding what I'm trying to say here? Yes or no? Have to say something. Amravati is Hinayanic Buddhism. And because it is Hinayanic Buddhism, no idols of Buddha, but rather Jataka images or what we call as the stories around Buddha or his symbols are used. This means that the subsidiary images are very realistic, convey sense of movement. They also represent a sense of elongated, slender bodies and have oval shaped faces in most cases. And this is where Amravati, one more thing, which is greenish black sandstone. So when we see Amravati, yes, but confused. I have no idea how you are confused with something still. But starts in 1st century CE, indigenous but increasing Greek influence for Mathura, extensive use of locally sourced white spotted red sandstone. First images were of Buddha. Thereafter, we get Lord Vishnu, Lakshmi, proper Hinduistic images also. But we also have emperor images, and that shows us coats, tight boots with regards to that. So this is the Mathura discussion. Amravati, if you see now Buddha is through his symbol, the Dhamma Chakra, and now the subsidiary bodies are made very, very well. So Satavahanas and the Ishwakus, these are very local, small local kings of this area. There will be the Nagarjuna Konda sector and Amravati sector, which is very, very important. Naturalism, sense of movement, energy, slender, elongated. And can anybody tell me in this image where is Buddha and his symbol? This is the birth of Buddha. The birth of Buddha, Maya scene. Where is Buddha? Very good. The elephant shown here. So the elephant represents how Buddha is going to now take birth. So you can see that the subsidiary images have become much more elaborate. Even, for example, the crocodiles, which is the makaras, are shown with very realistic scales in that regard. Narrative element is there because it is Hinayanic Buddhism, and naturalistic plants, flowers, these are things which are represented. And because it is Hinayanic, as it is, Buddha will never represent it in idols. So how elephant? Elephant is one of the Jatak stories. Buddha was an elephant. Elephant is a symbol used for Buddha. How and why is Buddhism, Jainism, which we discussed previously. Now, We have discussed the three main schools: Gandhara, Amravati, and Mathura. Anybody has any issue here? What makes Gandhara Gandhara? What makes Mathura Mathura, which is phase 1, phase 2? And what makes Amravati Amravati? Schools clear? Perfect. Now, in the Gupta period, they all start to consolidate, and they all consolidate into what is called as the Gupta school. And Gupta school was used very extensively in the temple architecture. So it brings Mathura and Amravati together, and this will explain to you why there is so much narrative sculpture in temples. Which is the influence, Mathura or Amravati? The narrative sculptures in the temples is because of Mathura or Amravati? And religious art is becoming more and more common. Bhagavad cult, which is the concept of the Shavtar, is going to become very, very common. And temple buildings will become now the space for creating sculptures, which we've already seen. But the Buddhist school still survives, and it survives in the form of Sarnath School of Art. And Sarnath School of Art is known for its cream colored sandstone, which is used. It will keep Buddha and Bodhisattva's sculptures alive, whilst Buddhism was becoming more and more obscure and Hinduism was becoming more and more powerful. The fact is, Sarnath School, a subset of Gupta school, will keep basic ideas of spirituality, Buddha being fully draped, less draped, alive in that regard. But in a way, from Gandhara, Amravati, and as much as we go till Sarnath, it is a gradation. We are becoming better and better. However, if you go to the Pallavas, which is in the southern sector, there is somehow in Mahabalipuram a regression. Pallavan school of of sculpture, as represented in what is called as Arjuna's penance and descent of Ganga, which is this image, there's a regression. And the regression you can see very simply. While Amravati, Gandhara, Sarnath, Gupta were very good in representation of scale, this is the descent of Ganga or Arjuna's penance. And you can see what is the biggest issue here. They have taken one rock and started to carve on it. What is the biggest issue here? First is it is cluttering. Too much has been shown here. First. Second comes scale. Somehow this temple is smaller than the elephant, and the elephant somehow is bigger than most of the things. Further, they have tried to push a multi-point perspective, which makes it even more problematic. And therefore, though they are known for their sculpture aspect, scale cluttering becomes an issue. But it is again the sculptures going to southern sector, and these sculptures or sculpturers will then create a masterpiece in the form of what is called as Chola bronze images. The most celebrated of it, the Nataraja image, which till today is considered the most expensive. The same Nataraja image, through the lost wax technique, created the G20 Nataraja, which is in front of the Bharat Mandapam. But that concept of Nataraja came from the bronze sculpture of the Cholas, and they again use the same technique, lost wax technique, to produce this object itself. We have multiple images which were produced through the lost wax technique of the Cholas. In a way, we have come again full circle how he came in paintings. We started in murals, we ended up in murals. We started with lost wax technique, and we are back at lost wax technique. And therefore, Nataraja, the Shiv Bhik Sanatana, the Shiv Virandar, the Bodhisattva, and the the Allavar and Nayanars were very beautifully represented under Chola sculpture. Chola sculpture till today is the most smuggled sculpture because of its technique and finesse. And more than that, you have the 10th century, the Chola queen, Sambayam Mahadevi, was the one who was the most biggest patron of this sculpture. And by the time we come to the Vijayanagara period, Vijayanagara took it one step forward. In Tirupati, what we see is that rather than just making gods and goddesses out of bronze, Krishnadev Raya and his two queens, Trulamba and Chinadevi, are actually represented in Namaskara Mudra in bronze in front of Lord Venkateshwara, so as to show that the king is always present inside the Garbhagriha. What I'm trying to argue to you is that we have gone a certain gradation, and this is the last discussion we have. We started with the concept of lost wax technique, diversity. Then we went to these schools of arts which have certain influences, and thereafter we come to the Pallava space where there is a little bit of regression, but it is the Pallava sculptures who take it to the highest point possible, which is the Chola sculpture, which till today were is considered the most important, and were able to create lost wax models of kings and queens. If this is clear, our purpose of discussion is done. When we start on Monday, we start with festival dance puppetry, and our big four are done. Always takes time, but I hope architecture, sculpture, painting is totally properly done. Yes? Beautiful. So now your homework is Saturday, Sunday, consolidate, and I would recommend whatever monuments, whatever temples I have asked you to do, just go through them once through video if possible on YouTube. It will help you. Monday is, I know, Makar Sankranti, though 14th, 15th both, we will still meet. It's not a holiday. So 15th, 16th, 17th is the official 3 days which is left. So you will see me on 15th, 16th, 17th, and then on 20th. 15th, 16th, 17th, we'll do the smaller topics. 20th, we have the doubt session, but I'll take an extra session on 20th. So we'll see with regards to that. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.